Hello there. What is going on? So today we're going to talk about outposts. Those are magical things. I know. It's so magical. It actually happened in 2 tournaments. Let me browse the internet for a second though, while I say my heys and hellos. Hello there everybody. Why Baby Yoda is sexier than a Grandmaster? What? Humanity is helpless in the face of Yoda. Yo, what? Why are we helpless? Not quite certain. Hello there, Susov. Nah, I'm not helpless. I know it's not Yoda. It has a big face and big ears. It actually looks like a gremlin to me. And I like gremlins. I'm not sure I care about Baby Yoda, but so light things up a little bit. So today I'm going to talk about Outposts, and it's going to be fun. If you followed the recent events, there were a few games that actually paid homage to that idea of getting Outposts. Hello, Alkaline, what's going on? So this is going to pinpoint how to play strategic chess, which some of you just love so much. Oh my god. Raise your hand if you love strategic chess so much. People love strategic chess so much, they love Baby Yoda even less when they hear about strategic chess. You either love strategic chess or you love Baby Yoda. There's no in between. Or you know what a gremlin is. There's no way you don't know what a gremlin is actually. Unless you're born today, you're a gremlin yourself. Or you're around 10 to 13 years old when I forgive you. Then I forgive you that you don't know about that. Actually, I'm going to post it so you guys know what I'm talking about. This is the science between about Yoda. Actually, not that's not the one that I wanted to post. Let me find that. Let me show you guys the gremlins. The gremlins, the lovely gremlins. Yeah, look at that. Here's the IMDb of the gremlin. That's how a gremlin looks. Compare it to a Yoda, I mean a mini Yoda, and you'll get a cutie pie. That's basically the same thing. It's the same plushie. Anyways, it's a gizmo. Yes, it's a gizmo. It's a gizmo, indeed. Chat, by raising your hands, tell me if you know what a gizmo or a gremlin is. Please give me your explanation. You saw it, Susov. Of course, I'm telling you. People know what a gremlin is. I know what a gremlin is. It just makes me feel real good. And also, I'll be honest with you, and this is just between you and me. The Gizmo and Gremlins are much cuter than Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda is like a, it's like an accidental baby just walking in front of you and say, "Oh, it's a baby! Oh, it's a baby!" On the other hand, a Gizmo is just, it's a legit alien. Also, not a big friend of water. But I mean, who's a big friend of water anyways? I mean, that's kind of weird. Because even chimpanzees love water if it's a hot bath. If it's not a hot bath, they're not crazy about it. So don't get me started with the and all the humans started as swimming apes, and it was just beautiful and great, and it was just wonderful. They never had a better time. They never wanted to leave the ocean, but then they had no chance but to stay. Oh wow, wow. Nah, chimpanzees only like these bath places. In fact, I think I saw an amazing picture taking a hot bath with people. Yes, I found it. This is amazing. So they saw humans. No, no, no comercial. Here's the link. This is amazing. So in Japan, these chimpanzees, they just showed up and says, "Nah, what are those people doing? What are those people doing there? Why are they in that water?" Yeah, I think it's the red-faced monkey, Duchamano. And they said, "Nah, Harold, Harold, my friend, Harold, would you wanna join us and have some time in this bathtub? Oh, Harold, we should do that." And then Harold and the other monkey just joined the humans at the bath place. So I don't believe that humans and I don't think we care that much about water. But when it's hot water and they see that, hey, those things that those chimpanzee looking like things that are human, because we call them human, and I don't know what chimpanzees call us. Probably they said, if they enjoy it, Harold and I will enjoy it too. Then Mavi, doing great. Just a little upset that they think that Baby Yoda is sexier than a Grandmaster. And I think that's outrageous. Nothing is as sexy as a chess Grandmaster. I won't take that back, okay? Stand by my words. Again, I'm curious. So Susov said that he saw the Gremlins. Chat, have you seen the Gremlins and Baby Yoda? Actually, that's the one that I'm always interested in. Ridiculous statement that is. Ducemano, how dare you? How dare you? Disrespect me like that. Also, I've never seen a chimpanzee with a short hair, so I win. I win. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Anyways, I just saw this Baby Yoda and why it's so ridiculously cute and something. I don't know. I think the gizmos are cuter. A? I don't know why. That's just my hunch feeling. Also, I read that Mickey Mouse has been like, look like a weirdo. The character looked like the weirdo, but then certainly it turned into more of like a cute character through the ages. But anyways, let's get back to what we are here for, and that is Shah. Cool. Shah it is. So, we're going to talk about outposts. Um, Obviously, feel free to talk anything or every feelings you have about monkeys taking a bath break with humans in Japan. I think that's awesome. I would do that if I was a monkey. That's not that I'm not related, but I'm kind of a human. Anyways, let's get into it. So, outposts are very important in chess. In fact, I'm going to start with the game played between two really, really good players. In fact, there's a big tournament in Monaco. Baby Yoda cute? It wasn't my statement, okay? That wasn't mine. It really wasn't mine. So, I read it in a newspaper, an online newspaper, and I just read it out loud. I hold no blame. I plead not guilty. Don't hold me hostage to that idea. Alright, so let's just take a look at here. Masteries Goryachkina Zagnidze. Now this game, okay, let me write this. So this is played between Goryachkina and Zagnidze. Monaco. So right now, everyone is familiar with the idea that we have a big tournament in the Middle East right now. Can anybody help me where it is and what it is? It's very important. MVL will be really mad if you don't know the answer. So all you MVL fans, come out of your caves. Yeah, it's Jerusalem Grand Prix. Yes, Alkaline. Hebron? I don't know. Maybe. So they're playing a knockout event there. Exactly. But there's another event going on. And what's that? Can anybody tell me? Because simultaneously there's a men's and a women's championship going on. Can you guys guess what is going on right now? It's not London. It's not London. It's in Monaco, and it's the women's Grand Prix. And as we all know, we're going to have a World Championship match in January for the women's, and one of them is playing this game. D4, D4, knight f6, c4, e6. Kind of the most popular openings these days. Not really telling what is going to happen really soon. Yifan is not playing. As far as I know, Hu Yifan is studying in some English university. So I don't think that she's really going to be part of that. In fact, the white player, Goryachkina, won the candidates, and she is going to be the challenger in January. Now, I'm going to fast forward a little bit in the opening. Knight c3, queen c2, the old main line, kind of a Kasparov favorite, which became extremely big. But, you know, time has passed over this move. It's not as popular now. Castle e4, kind of the en vogue move. Before everybody played a3, then some people started playing knight f3, but e4 is an old slash kind of, in style variation. c5. And here we start our debate of the day. And that is what we call strategic chess in Hurray for Outposts. E3 is most popular these days, yes, Alkaline. So now when we're talking about these positions, we think about a few things. Outposts. Now, knights are fine when you position them well, but this knight is especially happy. Now, we love Christmas trees, but there's nothing like a Christmas tree with decoration. That's why that knight is so happy over there, as it's the decoration on the tree, as it protects that e4 knight, and is doing quite great there. Knight f3, well, white would like to get rid of that, and note that there's, for good reason, white is kind of exerting so much pressure on that knight. But the thing is, you can't really get rid of it yet. You don't want to part with your bishop there, because that would open up this dark squared bishop's diagonal, and that would be painful. Knight f3, trying to defend the center. So in this lecture, I'm just trying to show you how much it matters to have these outposts. And also these forward pawns. Mostly the forward pawns, but I kind of consider them outposts as well. f3 doesn't really work, Alkaline, because there is this sneaky check on h4. Go here, check you. And if g3, I can take you. And usually there's this queen f2 idea that could work, but it just doesn't. Note you can't take because the rook is hanging. Also, if you play queen f2, I have knight f5, among many other moves, defending the queen. Now, if this knight wasn't defended, you could take it and be up a piece, as there would be nothing to take the bishop. But in this case, if you take, I can take your queen and then take back, and then it's a decent position for black. So f3 is always an idea. So no wonder, so knight f3 is not the only move here. Some people play a3, takes, and with this pressure kind of released, f3 becomes more and more of an issue. Because if, let's say, black plays something ridiculous, one you can take, but okay, let's not play that ridiculous. So what I'm saying is mostly is that white can potentially capture the knight with f3 h4 plans. Let me even delete this line. Delete from here. Yes, so takes. And white is planning to go f3 h4 and capturing the knight. Now this is a completely different line, Alkaline. And that is something that they played in the past. Then it's not popular anymore, but it is a variation. So white played knight f3, just bolstering that pawn. And note that white has a little bit extra space. Well, while we are at it, Harty is asking me the question, any recommended chess books? Especially as we are in the Nimzo lines. I would advise you to, take a look at Ivan Sokolov's books on the Slav. On the Nimzo lines. Slav, Nimzo lines. Because he gives a very good understanding of what's going on here. Now, let's observe for a second. Who should be technically better in this position? Chat, any ideas? Let's relax, take a look, and observe. One of the most important part of chess is to learn how to observe a game. Playing moves is easy, observing is much harder. But if you get how to observe and understand a position, then you'll know who should be better or who has a better prospect for the future. So note that it's white who has swarmed the board with pieces, and that's a good thing. White dealt lots of pieces. It's 4 pieces compared to 2, and on the other hand, black castled. That would mean one thing. Yeah, exactly, Alkaline. White isn't ahead of development, but there's one big problem. One big problem, and actually that's what makes black's position viable. So white does have a firm control of the center. Firm, that's a bit too much, but there's definitely control of the center, pressure on that knight. But there's one thing that white did not do yet, which is very important, especially in chess. Also, there's one thing that Mr. Kramnik is advocating against these days, which white missed to do, and that is indeed to castle. And that's kind of the thing that yes, white has the center control, but the king is still in the middle and can get under attack quickly. Although it'll just move away in one move. So c takes d4, a very good move by black, initiating action while the king is still in the middle and under attack. Hello there, Legit Butter Enzyme Mob. Actually I said, and Vigby, yes. So knight takes d4, knight d7, immediately attacking this forward pawn. And actually the theme of this whole lecture will be, and is how important these outposts or forward pawns are. Hello there, Hyperborax. Now this game is played between the upcoming challenger at the World Championship match. In fact, she's leading the Monaco Grand Prix. Knight e5 is threatened, so white either parts with that pawn or does something to stabilize. So plays bishop f4, and this is kind of the deal. White would be happy if white could make two moves in a row, then this would be just a joy to behold for white, as white would have the control over that square, the bigger center with this forward pawn, which is kind of the key, what we're actually talking about. So bishop f4, and now the issue is for black, if you waste one move, let me play something really dumb, I castle, and now white is clearly better. Because of this forward pawn, white is just up much more space, and look at that miserable pieces still sitting in the garage, having a bad time, and they want to leave just right now because it's just horrible. Now, therefore, Zagnidze played this aggressive move, trying to break the harmony of these pieces. Note that this knight is undefended. So, if you want to exert pressure on these pieces, you need to do some action in the middle. How could we do that? We kind of accept like two moves. Both of them are fairly logical. Meanwhile, let me point out that white is doing everything to get rid of this joy of black's, that e4 knight, which is quite annoying. And if it moves away, then the position will be kind of pleasant for white. So I see knight c5 as an idea, queen b6 as an idea, bishop c5. Now first off, while we're trying to find a move, Texas Time Chess Monkey says bishop c5. First, let's think about this for a second. Which of black's pieces are doing some real damage to white? And that's very important. And that actually helps you find the right moves. Which pieces are active and are well functioning? Well, let me give you a hint. Obviously, this e4 knight is just wonderful. So would we want to get rid of it? Nah, we want to keep it because it's just great. I'm not saying anything, Texas Time Chess Monkey. I'm waiting for you to come up with your own conclusions. Yeah, PPK 777, exactly. Just like Alkaline says, this bishop and knight is doing some good work. They're putting pressure there. It's functioning. So those are not our problem pieces. Those are the pieces that work. It's not that we don't want to do some action here in this position, but definitely I agree with you guys. Those pieces are fairly great. So knowing that, what would you play now? Dear chat and viewers, it's you to move. It's black to move. So let me rotate that board so it's abundantly clear. Oh, nope, not wrong one. This one. Colloidal G5 does not help. G5 by no means helps you with development. In fact, it weakens your structure. And you don't want to do that. F5, how does F5 help you? F5 doesn't really help you. Also, the E6 pawn is hanging. The answer is, indeed, it's gonna be knight c5, but black decides to give a doubled pawns for... Okay, no. So knight c5 is played. Black could have tried to take first, that's why I thought that she would take on c3, but played knight c5 first. And guys, you get good old VBs for this, if it would work. But I need to start it. So knight c5 is the thing that works here, and that's the kind of the point. You want to activate your passive pieces. One thing is that this knight puts pressure on d3. What else? Well, it does protect the knight, defends that e4 pony that we like so much, but what else? Whenever you treat your pieces well... Yeah, I kind of stabbed myself with a pen, so I'm not happy about that. Yay, it works. Good job, people. Now I can exchange, yes, as this knight is protected. And again, note that the glory of the whole Christmas position holds it together, and that's why this knight is so powerful. So black is trying to make sure that that stands there as long as possible. Castle, and now we can take on c3, b takes, and this is kind of the deal. Why did black play bishop takes, b takes? Well, this is the easy reason. The reason is black is trying to double pawns. As we know, double pawns are worth not much. How much does a double pawn worth? I just said not much, but exactly how much that is. Yeah, you don't have to be that precise, Hyperborax. It's a bit too much of precision. Can you guys use pawns as, you know, a measurement? That'd be great, and not 0. Like I've dreamt of 0.7 pawns, but never seen a 0.7 pawn in my life. So everybody put your, you know, statistics in the pocket and give a rough estimate of how much doubled pawn is worth. So 0.7, just, you know, worth half a, well, yes, worth half a pawn, and 2 minus 1 is a 1. So that means because white has a doubled pawn, which is basically worth a pawn, the bishop pair is worth a pawn in this position. Note that white got the bishop pair for a terrible structure. Therefore, the position is fairly compensated slash balanced. Now, again, let's take a look at black's position for a second. Which piece ain't working? Which piece in black's position is terrible? We want to get better with it. This is horrible right there, right now. Yeah, the bishop on c8 is just terrible. As usual, that's kind of the problem piece. Shoei, thank you for subscribing for 2 months. Thank you for sharing sub rewards with everybody. Everybody thank Shoei for the sub. Thank you. Thank you for being part of us. So yes, that bishop on c8 is awful. So she plays bishop d7. So it can be useful. Where could this bishop be going from this position? Welcome back, Shoei. Yeah, you got something. You've got something that you got. All right, so that bishop moved to d7, and there are some issues right there. What are potential things that black is threatening in this position? That's a language I don't understand, but if you elaborate a little bit, Texas Time Chess Monkey, that would make our lives easier. Colloidal A4 what? So what is black threatening? That's my big question. So black is indeed trying to activate all these light pieces and wants to jump on these horrible pawns on c4 and c3. And if black manages to do so, then it'll be great. As BPK points out correctly, bishop a4 is the move that is threatened, harassing that queen, and that wouldn't be just a move. It does way more damage than you think it does. Why is bishop a4 so bloody strong? Chase away the queen and capture the bishop, the big blue sky is saying. Okay, so why is bishop a4 so strong? It wins material. Let me even give you a sample line. If the king moves, which is a dumb move, bishop a4, pow, the queen is under attack. And that wouldn't really be the problem. You can move the queen here, let's say, on e2, but this queen was doing, like every mom, many tasks at the same time, defending both the bishop and the pawn. But you can't protect them all, as there's at least 3 threats. You can try to go knight b3, but that's awful. You don't want to pin yourself, because that's never going to be a good way of playing. Hello there, Fun Hoffman, with the money for the people. The thing is, in this position, black would be the one calling the shots, especially as after knight b3, black can go ahead and take the bishop, and white will be still saddled with these pawn weaknesses. And as we said, this is clear advantage for black, because the cherry on top, that e4 knight, the beauty, the glory of black's position is still intact on e4, putting pressure just like the rook does. And this is advantage black. Oh, you're 1800 plus, Van Hoffman. Congrats. So, now, obviously, Goryachkina, she's the challenger. She's going to face Ju Wenjun in January. Doesn't fall for this. Realizes that this is annoying because the queen would have to defend this bishop on d3 and the pawn on c3. So she makes a preventive move. Let me find that preventive move. White to play and prevent threats. And these are actually the most important moves in chess to prevent attacking ideas. White to move and prevent black from overtaking. So we noticed that the threat is bishop a4. There are plenty of ways of preventing. You can block it, as Evman is saying. You can block it with knight b5. But in general, we have weaknesses to deal with. So is exchanges good for us in general? And I actually want to answer this question by you, chat. What do you think? Is exchanges good for white? Say yes if you believe yes, exchanges are okay. Say no, not in this position. Hyperborax says no, no exchanges. Yes, some exchanges. White has more space, Hyperborax, but I'm not quite sure that what that does mean exactly. So white has more weaknesses. So you want to keep as many stuff on the board as possible. And note that if we've just been to Hammerland, that is John Ludwig Hammer, then you might note that there's something you want to preserve. And I'm not gonna say more because that would be giving it away. So we want to keep something that can provide some advantage for white. Yep, that Nevin, exactly, it's the bishop pair. The question is how to do it. Let me still highlight this threat and the potential threat of coming this way. So indeed, bishop e2. Yes, very good. Bishop e2. Now, right now, in this position, is white down a pawn? Not figuratively speaking. Not yet, at least. Valentino's asking, is a4 a good move? Now, a4 wouldn't be necessarily a bad move, but then you let black do what she always wanted. Meaning, I take the bishop and your bishop pair is gone, Hammer is unhappy, I'm unhappy, and we're going to have a family feud. Okay? We don't want any of that. So a4 is not good because you lose Mr. Bishops, and there won't be a pair of them, and that's just bad news. That's all. Not necessarily a bad move, but in this position you want to keep the bishops. So bishop e2, knight a4. So Dzagnidze is going for the pawn. C takes, e takes d5. And here comes a big question and an idea. So remember what I say, how much a bishop pair is worth? Or if not, let me know. That's also fine. I'm just trying for you guys to remember my hypothesis, which is probably correct. So how much is the bishop pair worth? Approximately. If you give me a statistical number, I'll go nuts. So don't do that, please. Duce mano, almost. Hyperborax, definitely not half a pawn. Man, if Hyperborax comment would be seen by Bobby Fischer, Fischer would go ballistic. Okay, but I know from practice it's worth more. And it's worth a pawn. Little less than a pawn. That's so crazy to me. Like, there's no such thing as 0.93 worth of a pawn. Yes, computers are dumb and they don't know, they don't know that there is no. So what was your advantage? I was a quarter a pawn up, but it just I couldn't measure my quarter a pawn advantage. So I put it in a sippy cup and then I could see and stuff like that. And yes, wonderful. No, it's either a pawn or it's not a pawn. I'm not saying that GMs aren't dumb. I'm just saying for me, it doesn't really make sense. So I don't know what 0.93 a pawn is, okay? So if you can tell me what's the difference between 0.93 a pawn to, to an actual pawn advantage, then fine. Fine, you got me. So I'm not saying anything about anybody here. I believe that the only way I understand it, if it's either a pawn or not. No, you're okay. There's nothing wrong with you, Duchamano. 0.07 pawn. Alright. Anyways, she played f3. And f3 is an awesome move. A great move by the future challenger, Goryachkina. Why is it great? She's activating these bishops. And last but not least, she does something very important. Hyperborax has a good point with this pawn dialogue. It's like having 93 pawns versus 100 pawns. And of course, I always, whenever I start my game, I have 100 pawns, sure. It kicks this beautiful pony from that place. Exactly. And again, so if you would take and celebrate that you took the pawn, I would go and tell you that, hey, okay, you've got my pawn, but I'll go bishop d3. And now the coast is clear, this battery is raging on. And after h6, I can go queen d2, rook c8, and there's some beautiful, beautiful ideas here. And you can sense why the bishop pair is so powerful. It's white to move and play. Evman asked the big question of chess. Would you rather have the bishop pair or a pawn? Yeah, it does depend on the situation. To be honest with you, this looks like a happier position for white. I'd be happier to be white here. Indeed, bishop takes h6. Kaboom! Takes queen h6, and I have a huge attack brewing. And if rook e8, which is obviously not the best, I have this beautiful mate on queen f7. And checkmate, check. You go back, because the real target in these positions is the f7 pawn. You go there, here, and then the queen just chasse into the ultimate position. Queen takes f7. Now, why did this attack work for white, and why is this promising? Is the reason because these bishops are concentrated on the king side, and all of the black pieces are on the queen side, basically just spectating at best. So this I would feel is very promising. Also note that this bishop is more than just a wandering bishop in a wandering position. This bishop actually defends this e5 outpost, which is going to be actually the theme of the game. And not just that white has more space, as white is the only one kind of crossing through with a pawn to the enemy territory. But the thing is, white can easily start operations on the other side because of this e5 pawn. White has a great position because of the e5 pawn and the aggressive, and because of the e5 pawn and the potential to checkmate on the king side. Don't at me. That's a statement. In any case, this didn't happen. White would want to do this, but Zagnidze played knight c5, and she played this explicitly to stop this idea of bishop d3. In fact, to be honest with you, in that position, I'd give the pawn happily and I'd say that I'm better, I have the bishop there, get good attacking chances. So it's more of the bishop pair being stronger than the pawn, probably because it's an attack on the king. That's why it's so good. In any case, Zagnidze, in this Grand Prix, she decided to go knight c5, stopping white from getting this bishop to d3. As we saw, that would be pretty good. Rook c1, over defending the weakness, which is a good strategy. You want to over defend your weaknesses. Rook c8, queen d2. Why was queen d2 such a great move in this position? What is queen d2 trying and preparing? Yeah, it's a Grand Prix, G spades. It's the Monaco Grand Prix, where the women is playing for the next cycle. As we already know, we're going to have a match between Juve and June. Oh no, it's not an opening. And it's going to be an interesting fighting match. Yes, Ducemano, great point. White is planning to go bishop g5. Let's say black plays something innocuous, bishop g5, queen, let's say a5. White has a marvelous tactical idea in this position. It doesn't quite work, but it's well worth remembering. And this is fairly typical in these type of position. Easter, hello there, how are you doing? So the reason I'm kind of decided to do the lecture on this e5 pawn structures where you have this forward outpost pawns on e5 is because it lends you with many tactical ideas. And I do ask you guys to try to find this tactical idea here. Now, it doesn't quite work, but it's an idea well worth remembering as it might bring you some wins in the future. And the idea is bishop f6. Yes, PPK. The issue being, the queen is far away on a5. It doesn't really participate. Also, what else? Well, the king doesn't have a natural defender. And what defender that was? The bishop that we exchanged on c3, remember? We exchanged it on c3, Now we don't have a natural dark square defender that could come back and help the king. Now if black would inexplicably go knight d7, trying to neutralize that bishop, that would actually lead to a downfall fairly quickly. Now it is indeed white to move and min. This is the most technical but very important pattern that's well worth remembering. And this is how dangerous it is to play against these e5 outposts. One slip and you're gone. Ertugrul, lady g5, knight cast, joins in. Okay, what if I just block it with g6? Which is obviously not enough. Queen g5, very strong. Now you can take, but that doesn't help you. I'm still threatening checkmate. You could never take because I'm gonna call the arbiter on you. And if g6, there's this queen h6 move. And queen g7, it's very tough to defend. If you take, I take back, and it's checkmate. Now there's one thing, just a practical thought that I want to tell you guys. And that practical thing is, whenever you get this position, don't get too excited. Because if black manages to take this f6 pawn, let's say with a check, then your attack is gone and you're probably in big trouble. So you have to be extremely precise when you're trying to checkmate this way with the pawn and the queen, making sure that there's no way that black can come back in due time. So this position always requires you big calculations. Yeah. So always be alert. Obviously, g takes here works because there's this very nice move of king h8. Otherwise, queen g5 would be check and checkmate. But there is this move king h8, and the black rook comes to g8 just in time to stop any mate on g7. But I did want to show this idea because it's very important to remember the patterns of when do you survive in these positions and when do you get checkmated like brutally. Iman, yes, that's correct. G takes f6 here works because black can move the king in time to h8. Valentino, yes, this is my answer, that you can take the pawn, and this is good. The only way white could win this game if she could go queen h6, rook g8, and if bishop d3 would work. But obviously the knight would take. So most of the times the way white wins these positions is either the direct checkmate works, as I showed in the previous example, or you get the bishop. Let me just make some random moves. These are obviously just for instruction. White would have this move of bishop d3, and there's no way you can stop the double threat of mating on h7. You can't block. There's nothing you could block with. You could block with the rook, but I will just capture that and we'll have that kind of pseudo threat that is now a real threat on g7. So you have to multiply all these threats to make these attacks work, but usually because of this e5 and now f6 pawn, these are real threats that actually can materialize. Big Blue Sky, nice lesson. Thank you, Danish. You're welcome. I hope you enjoy it. So this is the thing why bishop f6 is a big idea. No wonder that Goryachkina, probably one of the biggest talents in female chess currently, played queen d2, possibly preparing this idea of bishop g5, bishop f6. Not necessarily immediately, and if you're attacking, you're not forced to go bishop g5, bishop f6, but you can do it after some due preparation. And a different idea that I still want to mention is, let's say a6, bishop g5, queen a5. You can go queen f4, kind of preparing queen g3 and bishop f6, kind of throwing the queen over and try to build up threats that way. So if you don't believe that your bishop f6 ideas work, never be too scared to bring another piece there to join the attack. So queen d2 is played, a6, c4. Now she changed plans, probably kind of preempting queen a5, but also c4 has a different idea in mind. What could c4 be about? Chat? Von Hoffman? I'm not sure. You're actually looking at two important games, and that's the game between Goryachkina and Zagnidze, and after that, I want to show you guys the big game between Wesley So and Yu Yang Yi. Falafel says, I think c4 is to retain the center. Well, yes. In fact, in this position, which side would you take, chat? Just a quick look at this position. I'm curious, which side would you take? And yes, I do love your comment, Valentino. c4 indeed tries to activate this bishop, which was kind of out of sorts, doing not much on e2, and if it goes to c4, it could eventually put pressure on the f7 pawn. So that's kind of the way to look at it. D takes, bishop takes c4, and to be honest with you, even though I just asked this question, but I'm going to break it to you, I like white more. For one, it's a bishop pair, so that's good. But also there's this e5 pawn, this outpost helping pawn, which is an outpost by itself as far as I know. And because of this pawn, as we saw before, any kind of tactical ideas will be brutal and decisive. G-Spade says, I take white. It also looks like a position that the computer valued dead even though. Well, because the computers don't know what danger is. Computers have lots of variables they work with, but one of them, danger, is not one of them. And actually, that's kind of like a human and an animalistic thing that we know what danger is. Danger is the potential to make one single mistake and lose. Now, it's possible that the situation is fine for black, but it's way more dangerous. If you make a single misstep, as probably Zagnidze did, she's going to go down. Queen e7. So she's trying to preempt ideas connected to bishop f6. Well, the point of this move is you can go bishop g5 now, because I can just take the pawn, and if that pawn falls, your position won't be great at all. Thank you for the follow, Slinky Seal. It's true. To be honest with you, human chess and computer chess is not much different. Computers... Hey, Legend Butter! Welcome to the gang. Let me just add you real quick. Meanwhile, try to figure out a plan for white in this position. Shouldn't be too hard. Just try to figure out a way, or actually which side you would want to play with white. Yes? Legend Butter, welcome to the circle of the weebs. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Say hello to Legend Butter. Ellipse says, well, algorithms do account for danger. Press X for threats. Yes, Ellipse, but this is the thing that they do account for danger, but they don't always show it. Like in this computer, they do show it. Thank you, Urs, for following. But the thing is, it doesn't always show it, or at least like in these big programs, they don't show it. Meaning Fritz, Stockfish, etc. They don't necessarily show it. See you, G Spades. I'm not saying they do sometimes take a look at those things, but humans are pretty good at saying that a position is not necessarily as safe as the computer says. Computer might note that these are the dangers, but long-term dangers, humans are better at that. Probably those are the rare cases that humans are better at, but we do know that in the future, probably there's danger. Now, this is actually a good example because White's threat is not to checkmate Black now. White's threat is to checkmate Black later. Yes, Iman, I like Iman's idea. That's pretty good. Rook e1, bishop g5, and e6 threats. Those are pretty good. It's a strong idea over defending the e5 pawn. So this bishop is ready to move. Also, if White will get the chance to push this f pawn up, then real mating patterns will show up. Now, if your computer would show that that f3 pawn is pretending and going to play f4, f5, f6 in 10 moves, I give full credit for that computer. But at the moment, as far as I know, that's kind of the big difference between human chess and computer chess. Yes, computers are extremely strong, but humans know where the danger lies 10, 15 moves later. I could tell you that f4, f5, f6 is the potential idea right there. Okay. All right, Teleps. Fine. So queen e3 was played. Rook e1 probably was issued because it would leave the c4 bishop undefended. Z's dude, thank you for following. Queen e3. So probably she decided to bring the queen here. So this bishop is still defended. And look at that. Look the way Goryachkina is playing. She's making sure that everything's defended. Also, queen e3 does something that rook e1 didn't do, and that is to protect this king from any potential checks from this diagonal. Is it a real threat right now? Zezdud Ayaya. Is there a chess anime? Not quite yet, but there is a Blitz manga which is spearheaded by Garry Kasparov. I think, yep. Yeah, but chess, okay, so PPK says that the way computers miss threats is they assume the best defense, which is very hard for humans. Indeed, that's true. No Game, No Life does have a little bit of chess. In fact, Code Geass also does. So, now, queen e3. Now, Goryachkina makes sure that this diagonal is protected. And this is very important, especially when you're trying to push the f pawn. Make sure your king is either in the corner, defended, or you block it with the queen. Now, this would be really dangerous if there would be a black squared bishop because you could get forked terribly and then you're skewered, that is. And then your queen would be a goner, and that's something that you wouldn't want to have. So, rook e8, bishop g3. Now, this is the deal. that we as humans, and this is my opinion, it could be wrong, but I stand by it. I already imagine the F4, F5, F6 idea, and the computer will realize it later. Yes, the computer can sit there forever and analyze it and then come up with it, but this is my first thought. And in fact, the big difference, I guess, between computers and humans that the computers are faster. So if I'm able to come up with an idea faster, that means maybe humans in that aspect could be a little bit better. But that's my opinion, and I stand by it. In any case, so the problem for Black is Black has coordination problems. She can't really go knight e6 because then you don't have any guards over f5, and if my knight lands on d6, that's basically like 2 pawns advantage. I will start harassing all of your dudes on e8, c8, b7, and these bishops will also have that clear target on f7. Don't even forget that f4, f5, even in the endgame, could become very powerful. Yeah, von Hoffman has a good point. The biggest difference between computers and humans is computers are not humans. Yes. So, okay, one last thought in this computer thing is that I think both the computers and the humans can find the best solution. The difference is time. And as far as I understand, whichever finds it quicker is the stronger engine slash human. So if the human finds the idea quicker, then I think that the human is stronger. Obviously, the computer will beat the human because it's more accurate. But at some cases, I do think that humans can find ideas quicker. Too few humans are listening. Good point, Ducemano. All those bots listening. Anyways, so knight e6, then we have this knight f5 idea. And the big problem here for Black is you have to come up with a plan. That's not that easy. Also, these knights are in each other's way. You really don't like this knight on c5, yet that is your best piece. So Zagnidze played b5. She's trying to gain some space. Now, if we observe this position, and let's lean back and observe for a second. Who will be better in an endgame? Eman says white. Von Hoffman says, well, it's obvious. Is it? Is it obvious? Are you sure it's obvious? White open position plus 2 bishops, okay. What could be the positive side for Black if we reach an endgame? Majority, yes. The pawn majority on the queen side will be very, very important in that case. And yes, white has the bishop pair, so that could kind of compensate for something. But if the queens are off the board, probably the fact that black has the passed pawns or a potential for a passed pawn is more important than white having the center. A little bit like the Berlin, but not that much. Also, the e5 pawn can be weak. That's a good point, Hyperborax. So bishop b3. Now, white decides to give the chance to take this because she doesn't really want to put the bishop back, even though that's an option because you then preserve the bishops. But she says, okay, you can take my bishop, but then you provide me a better structure. Like a b pawn is much stronger and can potentially withhold the a and b pawns. b4, f4. And probably the other reason she didn't go back is that she wants to support this f4, f5 push, which is much nicer to play if the bishop is on b3. If you go back to e2, I might potentially be able to undermine this e5 pawn, which is the glorious side of white's position. Bishop b3, b4, f4, knight c3, creating another outpost, which probably is a good idea by Dzagnidze. f5, and note why is it good to have a bishop pair, because you have all kinds of bishops, a light square and a dark squared one, and this dark squared one promotes the idea of having that pawn on e5. Note, if you wouldn't have this dark squared bishop, you would need lots of pieces to join and defend that pawn. But because this bishop is here, and it's worth much less than the queen and the rook, black can never really threaten to take that pawn. And if you can't take that pawn, then we know what idea spring to mind. What are those? What ideas can white be dreaming of in this position? And those are really good ideas here. Well, moves, Nightcast. I mean, obviously we dream of checkmating, but we need some basic concepts that we're thinking of. Yeah, wish I could just say that checkmate. That's it. Z's dude, bishop f4, g4, an idea. Bishop f7. Bishop f7 looks a little bit too much. So, is there any weaknesses in black's position? That's kind of a big question. Anytime you have an attacking position, check if your opponent has enough weaknesses. And guess what you need to do if your opponent has no weaknesses? Well, if your opponent doesn't have weaknesses, you must create one. Well, Ducemano, yes, you want to exploit weaknesses, but you first have to create them. Make them, yes, Legit Butter. So both e6 is interesting, but black does have lots of pieces defending that. So if you do that, you have to calculate heavily. But there's another square that's very important, and you can use that. It's very close to the black king too, which is not this well defended. In fact, the e6 square is protected by at least 5 pieces. So that's kind of annoying. Colloidal a3 is not playing on the side that you want to play on. You're definitely trying to play on the side where you have the majority. Rook f1, but what's the point of rook f1? I'm not saying rook f1 is a bad idea, but what is the point of it? Yes, guys. PPK says f6. I think one more time also said f6. Yes. So f6 is the big deal here. e6 is always on there, on the plate, but f6 is a bigger deal. Because as soon black takes with the g-pawn, this king's position becomes extremely precarious. And let's say rook f1, f6, just as mentioned, takes, or even have f6, g takes, bishop h4 ideas. And if my bishop lands on f6, that's like 90% sure it's going to be checkmate. So because black has less defenders on the f6 square, naturally grandmasters or computers would gravitate towards more this f6 idea. A little bit on e6, but more on the f6 idea. Bishop c2 makes sense as well, Zezedud, but in general, e6 and f6 is the big deal. So a5 was played, rook f1, very good preparatory move. No rush. Look, so whenever you're trying to play for mate, one thing is important. Note how fast your attack must have been. So white is not down material, so there is no need to rush with your attack. If you sacrifice something, there's rush. You have to be precise with your calculations. So rook f1 is a very strong move, preparing strong move by Goryachkina, preparing the f6 break. Now she knows that she wants to play f6, but there's no reason not to get ready for the onslaught. Why would you sacrifice when you don't need it? So she goes rook f1, knight takes b3, and that's a very good move by black. Knight takes b3, and I'm going to give it a good move sign because you want to remove the attackers when you're defending. Attacking pieces when you are defending. Also, it was getting annoying that this f-pawn could never ever move. AB and queen c5. I had a question there. Okay, queen c5 was played. In chat, why does f6 not work followed by bishop h4? Okay, I'll show you. So, if you play f6 here now, takes bishop h4, this bishop was guarding this e5 pawn. That's kind of the crown jewel of her position. She moves the bishop, now it's pinned, but the queen can still take on e5, and wherever your queen moves, I can give a queen e3 check. Let's say here, check you. I exchange everything. Oh, actually, I can even take on d4, but if I want to be 100% sure, I just exchange. And because now my pieces are dominating, and remember, we're in the endgame now, it's actually black to be preferred. Not that queen d4 is a little riskier, but queen e3 is for sure better for white. For black. Better for black, that is. That's why f6 doesn't work immediately, and that's why Goryachkina played rook f1. So, Dzagnidze, who's a very good Georgian player, takes on b3, queen c5. Now, in fact, f6 could be sometimes considered, but then white will have a wedge on e6, and again, hooray for outposts. That pawn is just destroying black's position. Black will have back rank issues in 10 moves, and that'll be a problem. Also potential protected passed pawn. Protected passed pawns are important to remember because those are like the aces in a chess game. You can't lose them and they can save you a game. So in any case, Dzagnidze thought that that would be just admitting that she's worse. So she goes queen c5 and trying to put pressure on that d4 knight. King h1. King h1 is an important move. Note that she played f4, f5, and whenever you play f4, f5, always look for danger on this diagonal. That's something that professionals know, that's kind of the big things that can happen. So Goryachkina, the new challenger, plays king h1, just making sure that king is tucked away safely, and if she ever tries to do some funny business on the king side, she won't have to deal with queen takes d4 check. a4, f6, here she goes, she's going all in. Now, how should black defend here? If you're familiar with Sicilian structures, this will be an easier task to find the defensive idea, but you might know a way to, just instinctively find the right move here for black. Black to move and defend. Black to move and defend. Hey, Llama Lord with the raid of Party of 34. How was your Steam? How was your stream, Caleb? Hope you had fun. You're just looking at some fun stuff, games from Monaco between Goryachkina and Dzagnidze, and later on, the Wesley game. Hey people, how's it going? You had fun? Did you flag everybody? I hope you did. Flagging should be a right for everyone who plays chess. Did some flagging? Good, good. So we're looking here at this position. Goryachkin is attacking, but we're looking and wondering what's black's best defense here. Knight e2 is the funniest move. Yeah, knight e2 is a funny move. I like it too. Only issue with knight e2 is... Actually, I don't know what's the issue with this move. This is a sexy move. I have to admit. This is sexy. I think Caleb's idea is if queen g5, ha! I check you. You take some ways, and then you can defend this pawn however you want. You can't go queen d4 because queen takes g7. And again, for all of you who don't play king h1, this is why you play king h1. There's no queen d4. It's not a check. Then you get mated. Thank you for the follow, Ilyas Hamimi. Why is... Oh my god. Someone else just looked at a different stream for a second. And they're looking at kittens eating food and said, what? Yeah, this is pretty nice. You've got a pretty fancy queen sack. Congrats. So knight e2 is interesting. Note that you can't really take was queen takes d4. Probably the reason she wasn't too happy about this with black, because b takes and greed is good. And as we know, and this channel is fond of greed, white would be up a pawn plus a raging attack. And that's kind of the reason she didn't go for this one. On the other hand, knight e2 is a sexy move. I have to give it to the Llama Lord. Yeah, they're watching cats. What the heck? Knight e2 is a sexy move, but greed is also in the way sometimes. And probably Dzagnidze didn't want to beat down a pawn. After f6, she played something else. A little less sexy, but still a good defense by Dzagnidze. a3... aren't you scared of being attacked and taken on g7? Moonman says, greed is good, greed is great. With enough greed, you'll be +8. Yes. You're not scared. How dare you? You should be scared. I'm a computer. I don't know fear. Well, my lord, with the answer. When you got to play g6, you got to play g6. And she didn't play g6. Man, I'm a noob. We're all noobs. She took on b3, and then she played g6. Ah, F for all of us. Dzagnidze just outplayed us. Probably she wasn't scared of f takes g7. I would be, honestly. Probably she thought that, I just queen this pawn, and then we'll be back in due time with my queen. Even maybe some back rank ideas in the future. Probably here, queens takes. And probably you can't really jump around that much. Maybe you could even go rook c6 and get a little bit, cheeky, because you can't capture that rook because your queen is hanging. Man, Dzagnidze. Yeah, the pawn on g7 is a shield, but I would be kind of worried with thoughts of if white ever gets the chance to take on f7, it's near checkmate. That kind of is a feeling I wouldn't want to have. It's kind of nasty. Yeah, so a takes b3, queen g5, g6. Now queen f8 could be also an idea, but g6 is fine as well. Her point is there's no queen h6 because there's queen f8. Knight takes b3. Now that was a dangerous pawn. If you see a dangerous pawn, greed. Just take that dangerous pawn. taking the dangerous pawn. Again, at this position, who would you take? If you're playing this important match, which side would you take? Would you take white? If you're taking white, you're taking the side of an attack. If you're with black, you take the side of the future, of that future aggressive b-pawn, which tries to become a lady of the new age. Queen f8 forced here? No, it's not forced. It's only forced if white does play queen h6, because this is the only move to stop the queen g7 idea. Hey, yellow Pikachu, how are you? Nothing against new ladies? Okay, so Hyperborax is taking the side of Mr. Black, even though she is going to protect that pawn and try to promote. Now the position is roughly even-ish, but to be honest, it's kind of annoying if white gets to put enough pressure on black's position. So let's see how it continues. Queen f8. Now she couldn't move the queen anywhere else because queen h6, and we say bye-bye to you as it's checkmate on g7. So queen f8, taking away that square. Rook a7. So in general, how I would assess this position? So first and foremost, white is more active, but she does have to deal with that pawn on b4. But as long as she keeps an eye on this pawn, black is really passive. Look at that garage sale back on the 8th rank. It's horrible. Bishop e6, knight d4. But it's kind of like a combination of a balance, like a balancing act for Goryachkina. She needs to put pressure on black's position, meanwhile stopping this pawn from promoting. It's going to be kind of a big deal, and it's kind of a difficult balancing act. Again, those scented pawn advantages. Okay, you guys talk so much about scented pawns. This is my big question. Chat, be honest. Do you ever think about scented pawns while playing chess? Honest chat, okay? Be honest with me, otherwise I freak out. Thank you for the follow, Yellow Pikachu. Legit Butter says no. Alkaline says no. White Dancing Rockstar says I do. 30 scented pawns is better than 3. Could be. Top Hat. Yes, Yellow Pikachu. You think how bad your position is instead. Yeah, I don't. I'll be honest. I never think about how many scented pawns I'm down. I only think about how bad the situation is. So white is kind of planning to go behind this pawn. With b3, probably rook b7 would come and trying to gobble up that pawn right there. h6, she's trying to grab more space, but this potentially could be a little bit bad because black will have to deal with that pawn in the future. Hyperborax, you really think your position like 0.2 or 0.3? It's hilarious. Hyperborax says, most of the time I'm right with the centi pawns and then I blunder badly. Yeah, PPK, we're in the same boat, says, yes, I'm thinking I have no idea how many centis I'm up or down. So h6, she is trying to get rid of this queen, but probably that's kind of waste of time. Probably she should try to push that pawn as quickly as possible. So h6, queen e3. Now queen e3 is a multi-purpose move. A kind of wants to stop b3. You go there, I can't think of rook b7. Note that rook b8 is not an idea anymore because I can just take you and this knight will be undefended. If you don't do that, the rook and knight will work together and win that pawn. Also, knight takes e6, rook takes b3 is an idea. Knight takes e6, rook takes e6 was played. In fact, this was played. But now white can gobble up, as this rook is kind of overloaded in some funny ways, because you can't ever go there as mentioned before. And then I'm gonna just gobble, 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 gobble. It is. And now again, look at that e5 pawn. In fact, e5 pawn is the only reason why this position is just so amazingly good for Goryachkina. Without that pawn, this outpost, that f6 pawn would never materialize. And now this king is very close to being mated. In general, black still has some hopes. And those hopes are related to exchanging pieces. Because in the endgame, maybe, just maybe, the 4 against 3 wouldn't prove decisive. Even that is not sure because the f7 pawn is an easy target and that could even be just dead lost in endgames. What are centis one more time is asking. So in chess, they use computers and computers say often that you're up, let's say 0.5 centipawns, which is hard to understand because if you translate it to human language, that means you're up half a pawn. Now, I've never seen a pawn cut into halves. Maybe some of you have, I haven't. And that's why we're kind of freaking out, or at least I'm freaking out sometimes when they say, oh, white is up centipawn. One more time, that's what it is. So knight d5, queen f3, just destabilizing this active knight, also moving out from tricks. Queen c5, h3. Now this is also a big move by Goryachkina. She is creating a safe space for the king on h2, so there is no backrank tricks in the future. h3, queen c6, rook d1, knight b6 takes. And she readily goes for the endgame because in the event she gets behind this pawn, she can have plans of having those tractors on the 8th, setting up mates on that rank, and also kind of harassing that pawn. h4. She didn't go there. Probably didn't want. I don't know why. Probably she didn't want the king to escape. h4. The idea being if g5, which would create some space for the king, she could go h5, and then that king is kind of cornered. Yeah, over the board chess you can't use computers, thank God. h5, rook d8, and now this rook enters the fray, and now she's just dead winning. Rook c8, rook takes c8. Now, there's a beautiful tactic here that Goryachkina didn't play for a good reason. But that doesn't mean that we should note that little trap that Dzagnidze set. What was Dzagnidze's little trap? Dzagnidze's little trap. Smart, yes. Rook takes b6 is the trap. But is rook takes b6 any good? Is rook takes b6 any good? For white? No, black played rook c8, setting up a trap. So rook takes b6 has a little bit of an issue. You'd think that it's great, but it ain't. It no good. Because rook b6, for one, you can take, and this rook is defended with this pawn, but also there's this very nice counter check here, and then you can take. The point being, if I take here, you take, and you would be up a piece. But you can move that in with a check. The king moves, and then you can just capture that rook. So even in bad positions, it's never a bad idea to give your opponent the option to mess up. So rook takes, rook b8, and now this is completely lost thanks to this e5 pawn, which kind of takes away this nice square from the knight. Also, we have this idea of taking on f7. Rook c6, bishop f4.
Just making sure there's no rook c1 moves. Rook c4, g3, stabilizing. Note that she makes sure that all of her pieces are defended. This is an important theme that you're going to see very soon in the other game. King g8, bishop h6. Well, where is that bishop going? Heavy chess, thank you for following. Where is that bishop going? Why did she play bishop h6? Actually, a very nice plan. Why is she going to g7? What's the point of bringing that bishop to g7? What's the idea? Looks so mysterious. Exactly, to overwhelm the king on g8. The point being, if this bishop arrives on g7, this knight is doomed to stay there because rook h8 will be checkmate. So here, e6 was played, but the point was here, here, and you can't ever move that knight again because there's rook h8 checkmate. And then, just like in some famous games, Alexandra Goryachkina's king would just walk up, oh, let me do that straight line, walk up the king to d5 and then push e6. Now, she fell into a trick immediately, falling for e6, which is very pretty. Point being, if you take that pawn, I go f7 immediately and queens. And if you take, again I take on f7. And because of this doubled pawns, you can go behind the f-pawn, and the f-pawn promotes. Note that this wouldn't work if the f6 pawn wasn't there, because king g7 would save you from the promotion. And this is the big win by Goryachkina, and she's leading Monaco right now because of this game. So Goryachkina won with this very nice e6 idea that the game went. So she went e6, but next was agony, knight d6, bishop f4, just getting rid of this knight, takes, king g2, just walking up the king, and rook f8 wins. A very nice game. E5 was the key square, which she used. This was the key square, and she used it to actually push the f-pawn up to f6, and that was the reason why she actually won this game. And that's something to remember. Alright, so this was the game played between Goryachkina and Zagnidze. Here's the link for this site, for this study. I'm going to look over the wonderful game between Wesley So and Yu Yangyi. Same concept, hooray for Outposts, that e5 outpost was critical here. And so will it be in the game between So Wesley and Yu Yangyi. So, let's take a look. Also, some of you who are new, welcome. Good to see you all. We kind of a mixed channel. We have a Discord where we talk chess, but also we talk anime. So if that's your cup of tea or a cup of coffee, whichever you like, feel free to join us. You can join us also on Facebook. And that's where we reside. And also, if you like this content, feel free to sub or follow, whichever fits your bill. Or cup of hot chocolate. Yes, Mornaki. So here's a question from Sundance. How would you describe each 100 points of Elo on Lichess? Just won your first game. Congrats. Well, how would you describe that? Hmm. With every 100 points, there's more dedication. So if you're up ahead in with 100 points on chess, that means you have more and more dedication for the game. I think that's kind of the big difference between ratings and titles that, the more dedication you have, the more rating you get. All right, so let's go back to that game. Again, this is the study where you can find this game analyzed, the Goryachkina game. I'm going to post it again if you're interested. And going to take a look at the game played recently, I think a few hours ago, between Mr. Wesley So and oh, Mr. Wesley So. Oh, yeah, that's off. Good. Wesley So and Yu Yang Yi. Now, this one was one of those few games that were decisive. The theme of the day is if you're just joining, and that's kind of a concept I want to tell all of you if you're new, and even if you've seen it before. So, we've seen in the first game, or you've seen the last part of that Goryachkina game, that e5 outpost is so important and can win you games. And also you note that you want to get rid of your opponent's outposts so your opponent doesn't get ample counterplay. And that's something that you're going to see in this game. Heavy Chess says, thanks, it's gonna help me with my theory on the Nimzo Indian. I hope it helped you a lot. Alright, so let's get into that. E4, E5. So Wesley plays D4 and E4. But he played e4 in this game, e5, knight f3, knight f6. Now, knight f6 is the big hype these days. It's been popular in the 1990s, was played by Karpov against Kasparov. And it became a big theme again when he played it, when this had a resurgence because of Kramnik. And now it also had another resurgence when Caruana picked it up against Carlsen. Now, but that's not the big deal. Wesley played d4. Most everybody takes on e5, but d4 is also a variation. Knight takes e4, d takes e5. Ha! Just like in any movies, you see the blockbuster title coming up. When you see Mandalorian show up out of thin air, you say, ha! It's the Mandalorian. Or the Baby Yoda, ha! It's the Baby Yoda. And then everybody says, ha! It's basically like the Gremlins. In any case, e5 outpost just showed up on the board. You should be thrilled. The theme of the game is on e5. The big question is now, is bishop c5 possible? And my answer to you is, nah, it's not possible. Bishop c5 wants to attack that pawn and try to gobble. It's no good, because there's a very nice move that was prepared by Wesley. What's Wesley's move here? This is not the game. Bishop c5 wasn't played because this is well known to be bad. White to move and play. So note that it's very annoying to deal with this pressure on f2. Heavy chess, yes, this is that line. Fate, you're close. You're very close. But I wouldn't be so negative about it. Yes, Queen d5 is the monster move. Attacking both of these fellers. And if you take on f2, you think you're so smart, but you're not. I'm just going to go ahead and take that knight. And if bishop takes, I go king e2, and this knight is under attack. And this is advantage for white. Therefore, this is the queen d5 move, which is very strong. Maybe even bishop c4 is not quite sure, but I think queen d5 is also refuting this bishop c5 idea. f5? Maybe, maybe. But in any case, this is usually a very dangerous position with this king constantly in danger. f5, but as far as I know, this is considered very dangerous for black. This king is kind of stranded in the middle, and white will eventually have the time to get all his pieces out. But that's not our point. Bishop c4 is also a very interesting move, as pointed out by Fate. So Yu Yangyi obviously wants to play this solidly and plays d5, bolstering that knight on e4. This is the big critical line. Oh, it was Borax. Okay. But you did mention it as well. So e5 is an important outpost, but also like a decoration on a Christmas tree, that knight on e4 is just having a blast. Now, if we're Wesley So and we're playing white, we don't quite enjoy that knight chilling on e4. We do like these beautiful decorations, but not if we're white. We want to get rid of them as quickly as possible. Yeah, exactly. So how can white get rid of that e4 knight? There's many ways to get rid of this, but remember Wesley is playing for this outpost. He's playing for this forward pawn to actually show its merit. And if you're playing for merit, you don't want to create more weaknesses. Keep that in mind when you're trying to find the right move to undermine that knight on e4. And that is knight d2. I'm not saying knight c3 can't be an idea, but that's kind of met by this annoying bishop b4 move. And you're not ready to castle yet, and you might have to face the consequences, aka a doubled pawn, which you don't want at all. So knight d2 is played, knight takes d2. Someone just mentioned in chat, and it's true, this is the legendary Gashimov-Galfond game. Gashimov, who you might not know about, is a fantastic Azerbaijani talent who sadly passed away quite early because of brain cancer. In any case, that was a legendary game by Mr. Vugar Gashimov, who sadly passed away young. So this was one of those key games. But here, Wesley plays something that you wouldn't want to play. But he does it anyways. He comes up with a very nice concept. Everybody would take here with what? With the queen. And that was the Gashimov game, which Vugar won brilliantly. But Wesley does the simple bishop takes d2. Now it's a little bit early to come up with a concept here, but let's think about this for a second. What are the potential trumps and benefits of white's position? Yeah, Azerbaijan has many very strong players, but Vugar Gashimov was one of the especially great ones. So, what are the positive sides for white? What can white be playing for in these type of positions? Kite, the Joker, has a good point. White has a lead in development, and that's very important. White is up to Tempe, but what else? There's also one more thing that's very important to mention in this type of position. What does white have that black does not? Thank you for the follow, Papniza. That outpost also, white has the majority on the king side. And that's something special and important. White has the majority, and that's so important. Yes, black has the majority on the queen side, but that means one thing, and one very important thing in this position. What is that? It's danger. It's danger, stranger. Black is bound to be under attack because white has an extra pawn on this side. White can go on and try to attack. So bishop e7, maybe bishop f5 makes sense here, trying to stop bishop d3 moves, but Yu doesn't care. Bishop d3, c5. So Yu immediately mobilizes his pawns, trying to counterbalance this e5 pawn. c3, Wesley is building a stronghold, trying to hold off potential pushes. Knight c6, castle. Now, if you're black, where would you like to castle? What would be your choice? King side or queen side? Heavy chess says queen side. Iman says king side. No castle. Queen side because I haven't attacked there? That's questionable. More ambitious and you can pawn storm. Yes, that makes sense. So indeed, I kind of agree. As far as I've seen many games. In fact, maybe a Grisha Karana. Black could think about going queenside, as there's more pawns on the queen side now, and no real attackers here. Maybe although you have to think about b4 breaks. So bishop g4 was played by Yu, pinning, also kind of undermining that e5 pawn. But note that the king is still in the center. Even if black manages to take that pawn, that would open an avenue for this rook to attack. Legend Butter, you think you're joking, but even king d7 makes some sense. Even if it looks a little ridiculous, the king can walk to the queen side if he definitely wants to, and it's not as ridiculous as it might sound. And GSQ has a good point. That bishop on d3 looks quite scary. The rook e1 played just overprotecting this e5 pawn. Now this is actually a recurring pattern of this whole position. And this is something that's well worth remembering. Whenever you have this forward outpost pawn on e5, make sure you defend it well because that's your crown jewel. From there, you can start your attack and it can just destroy your opponent. That doesn't always work, but if you start defending them, and look how Wesley makes sure that this pawn is super defended, he can mount an attack from that square. Queen d7, kind of hinting that, hey, I could castle this way, but hey, I'm kind of inkling with the idea of castling long. Now, Wesley plays a very nice little preparatory move. Wesley to move and play. It's a sneaky little move, but it's an important one that he's playing. Alkaline says, I always tried to trade it off thinking it was over advanced. Yeah, no, keep it. So Wesley played a very nice little move, asking some questions from Yu Yi. Can you find it? A4, I'm not sure what's the idea behind A4. Maybe it's genius, but I don't know. What's the plan with A4? Okay, bishop b5 makes sense. You're not insane, Warnaki. Bishop b5 makes sense. You want to pin. That's fine. So, first off, that bishop on g4. How annoying that is that on a scale 0 to 10? Pretty annoying, right? So it just makes sense. 7, URT says. 6, says Susov. Heavy chess, 11. Hate it. Yeah. So h3 is played by Wesley. The point is simple. This bishop right now has a multi-purpose. It can go back to e6, defend the d5 pawn, or it can go bishop h5, bishop g6, neutralizing the d3 bishop. Now, if white just goes bishop f4, and I castle whichever way, I have time to decide which way I want to go. Do I want to go on the king side, defending my king? Do I want to go to queen side and defend my king there? So it just makes a lot of sense to play h3 right here. Wesley asking, okay, make a decision right now, here, tell me where you're going. Are you going queen side, going bishop e6 and castles? Are you going king side, play bishop h5 and bishop g6? Now this is not necessarily the objective truth, but Wesley is asking an important question early on from Yu Yang. Tell me your plans. Tell me what are you trying to do. This is part of chess psychology. So he plays bishop h5. He spends at least like nearly 2 minutes deciding on going on h5. Bishop f4, again a very good move, over defending that pawn, which will be very important later on. Queen e6. Sometimes there are some e6 tricks. As this bishop is not defended, there are tricks that can get nasty. So queen e6, Yuyangi blocks that. Bishop e2. Why did Wesley play bishop e2? What could be the reason? Well, the reason is he really wants to move this queen somewhere and activate his pieces, but he's not going crazy with g4, bishop g6, because black is not castled yet. Black can go h5ing, so let's say g4, bishop g6. Note that bishop g4 never works because this f2 pawn will be just in time to defend that pawn on this pawn is just right there defending that g3 bishop. This is just beautiful for white. You're up a piece, everything's good. The main issue is bishop g6. Even though this can look promising, that black didn't commit to castle yet. So let's say queen d2, black can immediately harass white and put pressure with the h8 rook, which hadn't committed yet to attack. So Wesley plays bishop e2, just unpinning, which is very important. Castles, queen d2. Again, look at how efficiently Wesley is playing. Over defended the e5 square, the crown jewel of the game. Has his eyes on the prize, that weak d5 pawn. Because note that this pawn is not on c7 anymore. There's no way you can protect it with c6 moves. So this can be a potential target. Also note that eventually some jumps might become very powerful because they could hit the queen while attacking that bishop. Also, that h7 square could become a target if I get the time to attack it with queen c2, bishop d3. Let's see what's going to happen next. So bishop g6. Yuyangi decides, okay, I'm going to sidestep this thing because I don't want to run into knight g5 tricks. Let's say rook d8. Maybe Wesley could plan to go knight g5. Takes. And yes, we had some exchanges. But white is better because of this extra pawn. White has the bishop in a semi-open position. And white has some very, very nice plans here. What plans can white build here? Or build upon? What plans can Wesley bank on in this position? Exactly. Rook lift. So rook lifts become reality here. So white can prepare rook e3, rook a e1, over defending the e pawn, bring the rook to g3, and then again, as we've seen in the previous example that I gave you guys, white will have real attacking chances. Is white clearly better? We don't know, but white does have hopes of attacking. Warnaki, can we exchange queens? Chat, what do you think? Should we aim to exchange queens in this position with white? If chat answers this well, rewards is incoming. No, says Hyperborax. No, Iman says. Colloidal says no. Not here because white's queen is more active. Railbird says no. Heavy Chest says no. Okay. So far, I like the percentages. Heck no. No, use it to checkmate. No, no, says Zior Batag. Also, there's another problem. What is having the initiative? Of course, it's a good point, QSQ, that would neutralize the attack. So, who would be favored in an endgame? Thank you for the follow, Zior Batag. Who would be the big favorite here? You're a pacifist? Nice. Yeah, black is not just fine in the endgame. Black is even better because potentially black can aim to create a passer. So congratulations everybody. You all get good old VBs. Good observation. I appreciate that. So black is aiming to exchange queens. So as white, with this e5 pawn and with many pieces joining the attack, we should keep the queens on the board. That's something you should be aiming for in this position. So Yuyangi decides to sidestep this idea, plays bishop g6, rook d1, immediately putting pressure on the d5 pawn. Bishop e4. And here, Vasily to move and play. Now, it's not a super hard move, but a move that basically is the main concept of this position. So first off, what is going on in the center? What is black trying to achieve and what is white trying to achieve now? In the last few moves, you could see where Vasily's attention was getting focused at. What was he focusing on? Which pawn? This guy. This guy on d5. That d5 pawn is the big target for Wesley. So white is trying to undermine the d5 pawn. But for good reason, Yuyangi brought the bishop to e4, again building that Christmas tree, putting some decoration and Christmas lights, just to protect it. It's a knight outpost, it's supported by the pawn. And if that keeps being there forever, we're going to regret it with white. So Wesley makes sure to get rid of that and goes knight g5. But this is a pawn sack. Takes 6, h6. Now the thing is, if queen takes c5, there's a nice little move that would provide advantage for white here. I don't think it's that tactical, but it does give an advantage. Note that whenever you're trying to undermine your opponent's play, just make sure that you drive your opponent's pieces as far away as possible from those good squares. Bishop f3 is an idea. Thank you for the follow. Korastas. Heavy chess says f3. Iman says f3. Yes, f3 is the boss move. And this is very strong. Bishop f3 is a bit too pacifist. It's a bit too passive. Yes, you can't take, but you're not winning back the pawn. f3 is more forceful. The bishop has to move because it's worth less than the pawn. And then we take on d5. Unfortunately, I don't think we have a nice jump. Or, I don't know. This is just fine. We take the pawn back. Takes. And apart from dominating, having the d-file, we have the bishop pair in an open position and some clear targets on the queen side. So clearly white would be enjoying this position. And this would be just great. So congrats, Heavy Chess. That was a very good observation, Iman. So this is something that Vesely was aiming for. Now Yu Youngi didn't want that. Played h6, bishop e3, again attacking that pawn. d4, d takes, rook d8. Idea being he wants again to have a knight supported on d4. Just getting that outpost. Queen c3. Queen c3 is very strong. Why? Well, he steps out of this pin. And that's very important. Queen c3. If white would play something inocious, black can just take on d4. And I would even be conquering that black is even better because this bishop and this knight is way stronger. This one puts pressure on the king's side, maybe even some attacking ideas, but this knight is just dominating the whole field. Even here, I'd say that this is advantage black. So in fact, white really needs to be careful. So he plays queen c3, but it's very nice. Kind of preserving the pawn. Because black can really capture here. White just have way more defenders. You attack it with 2 guys. I defended with 2. So that's even. You take. And yes, the a2 pawn is hanging, but so is the e4 bishop. And if my pawn count is good, I'd say that this is up a pawn for white. So queen c3. So Yu Youngi naturally goes for aggressive play. Queen g6. And now it's the time for us to find the way to defend. White to move and defend. And people don't really praise Vesely for his defensive skills, but I will do it for them. Vesely's very good with defensive play. Sometimes he's not aggressive enough, but in this game, in fact, he's going to show that he is very well versed in both. He can take what, Heavy Chess? So obviously the big deal and question is what to do with this attack on g2. And note, this is an important event, so Vesely wouldn't play something ridiculous and lose. g4 is a bit too much, okay? I think it's a very, very brave idea, and to come up with that is great, but g4 is just too much. It's too much. f3, budget guy. f3 generally you don't want to play unless it's really good. Like I gave an example in the previous puzzle that basically f3 was super strong. Now the question is, should we defend it with a pawn move or a bishop move? I mean, g4 is a brave move, but maybe too brave. Not that it's bad, but it's very brave. Okay, so whoever says pawn, why would you defend it with the pawn? I mean with a pawn move, that is. Other says bishop f1. Slambangos is g3. Because with the bishop he can take it. Take what? Not quite sure I understand that. Heavy chess. Exactly. So Alkaline has a very good point. That's why Wesley played g3. Because the king is close, because the king will be defended by this bishop, it is okay to play g3. Also, queen f5 would be very annoying, but that doesn't really work. With bishop f1, queen f3, and ooh, that's really dangerous. But here white has a very good defensive idea against queen f5. But before we come to that one, the reason I think Wesley didn't play bishop f1 because this bishop would be stuck there defending the g2 pawn forever, and this bishop is not doing great on f1. It's under constant pressure for a long time. So the reason he played g3 is that he felt that he can get away with it, he can go play g3. Otherwise, obviously, bishop f1 is the most natural move, so if you said bishop f1, kudos to you. It's a decent move. Usually you're forced to play there, but he figured that he can get away with g3. But what if queen f5 though? And I think that Wesley got the answer for that one. Yeah, that's a good point, Happy Chess. Yeah, you can take with the pawn because it's pinned. King Konyi, Naruto is the best. That's pretty good, King Konyi. Inferno's person, hello there, how are you doing? Welcome. And welcome anyone else who's just joining. We're looking at this Wesley Uyongi game. Hello, just call me Remco. We are actually looking at this wonderful game by Wesley, focusing on the e5 outposts. So, the reason is bishop g4 works. King h2 is the other idea, it's not bad, but then the f2 pawn can become a big target. In fact, that's the reason this is not working. In fact, it's black to move and win. Black to move and win. King h2 would actually be a big blunder. Okay, I understand, but give me more than one move, please. Inferno's person, you're on the right track. I'm not saying you're not on the right track, but elaborate a little bit. Obviously, as I pointed out, this f2 pawn is in danger. But to really undermine that guy, we need to get rid of defenders. If you get rid of defenders, exactly, Inferno's person. Very good. C takes, so this would be a casual fork. Bishop takes. You can take with the knight. You could get some style points for rook takes d4, but knight takes d4 is good enough. Rook takes, but then queen f2. Shak mat, as the king has nowhere to go. So it's easy to mess this up. And that's why it's important to see bishop g4, as bishop f1 would fail to the idea of queen f3, queen h1. To play g3, c takes, bishop takes, queen e6. But as this queen is attacking both of these pawns, white is at a choice. Which one should we defend then? Which one is more important? Yeah, the h3 is pretty important, especially as we can get mated quickly. Now the other question is how to defend that pawn. MC Stolid says the one covering the king, good rule of thumb. No? Yes, kind of. The bishop g4 is an idea. Bishop f1 is, but as we talked about it, that would be a little bit passive. So probably not. Is there any other moves that we could consider in this position? King h2 is an idea. Yeah, bishop g4 is a big move. So far I see king h2 gets a lot of love, and indeed was played by Wesley. Now, if you've seen this game, I mean, you just joined, can see that Wesley's making sure that everything is safe and everything is protected. He noticed that this f2 pawn is not under attack and it's not going to be in attack shortly. If the queen would be an f5, we saw that would be immediate disaster. So now he gets a way to move the king, because if there's any attack, he can always go and play queen e3, over defending the f2 pawn. So far, white has a very good advantage here. Why? Well, for one, he has an e5 pawn, which is very strong, and it's putting pressure on black's position. What else? By the way, yes, Naruto is great, but so is Cowboy Bebop. I'm not even talking about Dororo. So in this position, white has more space. But what else is going for white? The bishop pair, definitely. Not the only thing, though. We have all of our pieces ready for action, compared to black, where there's a rook still in the garage on a8. Thank you, Max Solid, for following. So rook c8 is played. Yuyangi knows his principles, brings all of his guys in, and some active pieces. So it's not that clear how things are going to work out. But Wesley is alert, brings the queen into safety, and harassing that really strong bishop on e4. Thank you for the follow, Bradbit. Bishop f5. And now Wesley decides it's time. Wesley to move and play. So, first off, when you're trying to solve these puzzles, you have to note what Yu Yang-yi, I mean black, your opponent, is trying to achieve. What is black trying to achieve right here? Just move the bishop from e4, from this square, to f5. What could be the goal of that move? And what are the other goals that are kind of sneakily in the way? For one thing, obviously, taking on h3 is a big threat. But that's not the only threat. What is the other threat? That Yu Yang-yi is still kind of, sneak a peek at some moments. Because in fact, this is a double attack. Yes, just call me Ramco. Queen a2 and bishop h3 is a double threat. Now, in general, can we deal with double threats? No, we can't. We can't deal with double threats. The only way you can deal with double threats is if you check or counter Attack. Counterattack. Yes. That gives you weak points, guys. You guys deserve. So the move should be Hadouken. G4. Yes, smart. Yes. Hey, Hallward, how are you doing? G4. Oh, not yet. But now G4. I messed up. Played bishop c3. Probably didn't care about it. But after this move, boom, G4. Saying, no, 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 no. Go away with your bishop. Just go away with that bishop. But I do appreciate, and I agree with you guys, G4 was up for grabs. Yes. So G4, get out of my house. Bishop, bishop E6, and now Queen E4. Why is Queen E4 so monstrous? Well, look at the differences between those two ladies. What's the difference between those two ladies? Why did he take on A2? He thought that taking that A2 pawn is less dangerous because the bishop does get a little bit out of play there. So let me show that to you. So the reason he didn't take here is that this queen has to protect this guy, and white will get time to go bishop f3 and bishop d5. And this queen is kind of stuck there defending that bishop. So that's the reason that Yu Yang Yi didn't take on h3. Queen e4. Now the reason why white played queen e4 is twofold. One, the queen is very, very powerful in the center. Also, it sneakily stares at that h7 square. Also, as Alkaline points out, black's queen is very much out of play. That's the big difference between these positions. This queen on a2 is awful compared to this one, which is deeply involved in play. In fact, if we see this queen on e4, what idea comes to mind immediately? What would be like an immediate snap idea if it would be white to move? Hello, Evan Star. Of course, bishop d3 is the monster move because we would be building a battery. And that's not that easy to deal with because no more black squared bishops, no more queens back defending. And look, that guy on a2 and that lady is just too far away from defending. Bishop d3 is just monstrous. So, plays knight e7, preparing to get the knight to g6 in event of bishop d3, and even maybe rerouting the knight to f8. Queen takes b7. You know, if you see a free pawn, why the heck not take it? And if you pushed, you can infiltrate on f6, exactly. That's a good point. So if there's g6, I can go queen f4, and because you don't have the dark squared bishop, I am going to attack you on the dark squares, and that's very important to remember. Your opponent lacks that square, and then it's not good. Not good at all. So, knight e7, idea is knight g6, so let's say bishop d3, knight g6, h4, knight f8, and I'm just showing this that according to a very famous grandmaster, if you have a knight on f8, you are super defended forever. That is. Who was that grandmaster who said if you have a knight on f8, you never get mated? MC Slow said knight on f8, there is no mate. Heavy Chess says Kasparov, Karpov. Sure. Karpov says 7-star. Petrosian says Shorbuk. Papnaze, me right now. No. Larsen, Capablanca, Tal. No, it's not me. It's not. I just said it, but it wasn't me who came up with that. I want to see more of the right answers. No, you gotta get BBs for that answer. You come on, guys. You can't fail it. Knight on f8. There's no mate. If I see two people answering it quick enough, I'm going to. He's the first Scandinavian grandmaster who was one of the best in the 70s, late 80s. Autobanal, yes, you. Larsen, yes, it's Larsen. It's Bent Larsen. Congrats, guys. It's Larsen. He famously said that knight on f8 is so great that you never get mated. Obviously, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's not true. It's actually a true statement. You would be pretty safe there if the knight goes there. So Wesley changes plans and goes and takes the b7 pawn. Now everything is going on for white. The only thing is that this king is a little bit iffy on h2. Knight d5, bishop d4, making sure that all these weak pawns are defended. And note, and this is kind of the reason why Wesley is so good and such a great player. Look how many pieces are undefended in his position. Can you count it, chat? Can you count it? Wesley, yes. Wesley So is playing white. Is there any pawn undefended? How many pawns are undefended? 0. Exactly, Fintel. Exactly, people. Everything's defended by Wesley. The bishop defends the b2, the e5, the f2 pawn. The g4 and h3 is defended by the king and the bishop respectively. There's nothing, not a single pawn left undefended. And that's why his position is just so well coordinated. And that's why his position is much easier to play, because he made sure that everything's under control. Meanwhile, black has all these miscoordinated pieces everywhere scattered all over the board, while this a7 pawn is kind of struggling to enjoy life. How come you didn't exchange the knight for the dark square bishop earlier when his knight was on c6? MC Solid, I think Yu was trying to get counterplay, and he might just get some with this knight going to f4. Fintel, thank you for following. So a5 is played, bishop f3. Look how how harmoniously Wesley is playing. Now, just a king move and everything will be defended. The king will have a perfect shelter with this bishop guarding. It's a total cool guardian right there. Queen c4, b3. Just making sure that these guys are not that coordinated. At the moment, this queen was attacking the rook, but is defended by the bishop. And this queen was holding everything together. So Wesley plays b3, queen c2, and it's smash time. Wesley to move and play. Fantastic plays coming. It's ingenious plays coming in from Wesley. From out of the blue sky, you're gonna see some havoc breaking. Hulk smash. Exactly, poker commentator. Drama. Drama's in town. So think about this. The queen on c2 is defending that guy. But what can we say about the king on g8? How well is that defended? Emore says, thank you for following. Emore Casa. So first off, let's try to observe the position. We all want to solve it. But what are the main issues for black right now? What are the potential targets? Guys, be nice with each other in chat. Something like that, heavy chess, deflection with a sack, yeah, kind of like that. The rook and knight are potential targets, yes. The rook and knight are potential targets. Also, don't forget this king. Is there anyone around the king? Defending that king, like as it defended with the knight on f8. Does the black king have any defenders? I want a yes and no from chat. Okay? Is there any defenders around the king? This is important. That's how you solve puzzles and that's how you solve games. Games, that's how you win games. Amon says no. Heavy chess says that no. Yes, Evan Star, in this specific situation. Nah, don't go greedy, Evan Star. Be as cool as Wesley. No defense, no defenders for the king. So, white plays bishop takes d5. Bishop takes d5. And here comes the big move, the star move. Point being, I want to point that out before we go forward. Black couldn't take on d1, which would attack that guy. Because bishop takes e6, as pointed out by Chet. This rook is not defended. Also, white has plenty of threats. And note that the king is very, very endangered there. So it's not just that you're going to lose the rook, you're going to get probably checkmated as well. So, bishop takes d5. This is the critical situation. And we still need to find the big move here. And the big move is, bam, queen takes d5. Queen takes d1. And white is going to use something with this queen takes d5 idea. Namely, that this queen was deflected and had to go to d1. This king is left alone. You just need to smash on through to the other side pretty quickly before the black queen comes back. And it takes only a few moves. 1, 2. Oh, and it could maybe even check. So we need to come up with a plan quickly. Yes, e6, bam. Point being, you can't capture that pawn because queen takes e6 and both of your guys is hanging and your king is exactly in the place where it shouldn't be, getting checked. Exactly, that's just horrible moves. So queen c2 is played, f takes, then this is the check that I'm talking about. King h8 would even have more dire consequences. That being, queen takes g7, checkmate. Black has no time to gobble that bishop and will get checkmated. In any case, this is obviously lost because black is going to lose that rook. If king h7, White has this very nice little check on f5, forcing this pawn move, and then again there's checkmate on g7. Like check, here, check, and checkmate. So obviously Yoongi wants none of that and plays queen c2. Now we have to come up with a good plan here. We did sacrifice some material, so we need to go on and push forward before it's too late. Yeah, v4, heavy chess is exactly correct. So we take on f7, but what will be our plan after taking on f7? Or e7, that's also an idea. What's the idea of e7? e7 or ef? I see e7 is gaining some following. Iman and Prodijal El Piso says, yeah, it gives the idea of actually promoting to a queen. Kawaii Fisho, thank you for following. But is e7 strong enough? That's kind of the big question. Does black have a good move against it? That's a big question there. Indeed, the issue is if there, then we get checked, as I told you, black is so close to stopping us. If e7, check, and the pawn will be taken. You can block the check, but if you exchange pieces, black will be up the exchange and just winning. So e7, then I check, can block it, but then I'll exchange you, and I will block it with rook e8. So e takes f7 was played for that reason. Queen d7. Well, queen d7 runs into the same issue of queen c7 check, and then you're gone. So ef, h7. Now, again, we need to come up with a good plan here to win the game. Black is, again, a few moves away from, neutralizing some of the attack. It's still a raging attack. No, Yoongi is in big trouble with time and probably in position as well. So I see queen f5 mentioned, I see queen e5 mentioned. So if you think about it, what is white trying to look for in this position? Okay, a win. Of course you're looking for a win. But what is the key concept that Bestie is aiming for here? What are the trumps, what are the extra benefits white has compared to black? Well, white has a very strong bishop on d4. Also, there's a big difference between the kings. This king is way under more pressure than this king on h2. This is also under some potential checks, can be checked, but is not endangered to get mated. So let me read the chat. Silencio says, exchange for the rook. The f pawn is close to queening. Very solid observation, Max Stolid. Scratch and magician, yes. That pawn on f7 is a beast. It's a beast on f7, exactly. Well, time is an important part of the game, Inferno's person. It's true. But that's not the only thing that you have to look for in these type of situations, because you still need to win the game on the board. And that's very important. Never forget that. I know I'm just saying this, sometimes people get that feeling that, they need to win it on time. No, you should try to win the position based on the positional Stuff, queen f5 ain't too good because I can exchange you. I know you wanted to do some damage there, but my queen just defends this whole diagonal, and then the situation is just great for black. Yes, but Ultra Bullet is a different creature, Inferno's person. It's definitely a different creature. Yeah, he can exchange the queen, so queen f5 ain't good. We need to look for a different move. Yeah, playing two moves in a row is kind of dubious in chess. So you can only make one move for a white. What would it be? Chat, let me ask that question. You have only one move to make. What move would you play here? I don't want you to list all 50 moves. Choose one that you prefer. Take your time, take your time. But you can only play one. Kawaii Fisho says queen d6, Iman says queen d6, Oloida says queen e5. So far there's a big race between these two moves. Some said queen d7 as well. Queen e6 by Barak. King g2. King g2 doesn't really make that much sense. Scratch and Magician says queen e5. Queen e5 threatens mate. Bishop c3 doesn't do much. Queen e5, he can manage to exchange. f5, I guess you mean queen f5? There's an idea. It's viable, but probably a little flawed. b6, pizza master. So the thing is, in this position, you're already kind of ready for action. If black gets the time to just stabilize, get the queen back, get the rook back to f8, if black could make two more moves, you're done. In fact, black is winning. So king g2 would help black immensely to consolidate. That's why king g2 ain't good. Queen f5, as we talked before, black could take and be happy to be in an endgame. But the move is queen e5, and that's what Wesley played. Setting up this mating attack, setting up this battery. And sadly for Yu Yang Yi, queen c7 doesn't work right now because we just captured, takes, and queens, and that's just up a queen and completely losing for black. Queen d6 is fine, having queening ideas. If you go queen d7 though, I can go rook f8, and again, I'm only a few moves away from stabilizing. And note, you didn't have enough time to promote in that case. So queen e5, for that reason, was the ballsy, great move. Just amazing and good. Yeah, queen c7 isn't working. Queen d6 is probably just as good, but queen e5 is way more forcing this queen to defend this pawn. Queen g6, and then queen e7. And this queen is lured away from going to c7 and having potential checks. And now f8 is unstoppable. And also, if you would move the queen, then there are some deadly ideas here. In fact, there is a move that is even stronger than the move you'd expect to be played. White to move and play. It's very, very beautiful. Yeah, Barak is on the right, Koloida Well, that doesn't really answer the question. Ray Robson says f8 Cantor. Yes, knight. And this time the knight is a little stronger than queening because it's a check. The king moves, and then we say, okay, bye bye. Queen takes g7, and it was good seeing you, feller. This is how you play it. This is how you play it. So this was a very nice game. I liked this game between Wesley and Yu Yang Yi. The other game that I really liked was the Goryachkina one. Let me even give you the link for those who just joined. We were looking at games at e5, which were featuring more of games where white had an outpost on e5. And whenever you have outposts on e5, you can expect to have some fun later on. And some mating attacks, hopefully, and if everything goes well. All right, let me find it. Study my studies. Here it is. So here's the link for that study. I went through the game Goryachkina, Tsagnidze, where again an e5 pawn was basically the decider. So what we learned from these examples, you get these e5 pawns, you have the potential to build an attack. But you need to, continue in that lane, just like Wesley did. And just a quick recap of this game. DE immediately aiming to play on the king side, knight d2, getting rid of the crown jewel of e4 knight, which is kind of supported by the d pawn. Takes, bishop takes d2, bishop d3. And look, all of those bishops immediately threaten to either bolster the e5 pawn or have some attacking chances on the king side. d5, castles. And note, whenever you have this e5 outpost, you need to be sure that it's well defended so you can launch into that attack in the future. So queen e6, bishop e2, queen d2. Note that after he overprotected, he made sure that he can bring all over those pieces right there. Bishop g6, knight g5. Again, trying to undermine these guys over there. Takes, h6. And as I mentioned earlier, the big giveaway was, and the reason why Wesley played so well, because he found the right defensive ideas and made sure that that e5 pawn is always well protected. Fast forward to this position, g4 just getting rid of this bishop, and then came up with this beautiful combination of bishop takes, queen takes d5, e6, and queen e7, and after this, f8, and black resigned. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. And if you want to follow, feel free to follow us. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, sub, or just follow us on our Twitter if you'd so like. Whom should we raid? Smart. Thank you for subscribing with a tier 1 sub. It was great. You enjoyed it. I'm glad you guys liked it. All right. So let's raid Mannered Monkey. All right. Raid Mannered Monkey. He's a great streamer. Hopefully you'll have a great time as well. And hope to see you all next time, if you so want to be around. And if you like anime and you like that discussion, you can always continue on our Discord channel. So hope you all had fun. and see you soon. Take care, everybody. Take care, all. And have many, many outposts. Yes, you keep the Veeps. Of course, you keep the Veeps. Okay, take care, all. See you guys.